So you'll find that actually in the more broad spectrum stuff that I have, stuff like this is mentioned already. We do cover it in more of a brief way, but I feel like a lot of these things can be broken down and have their own video, their own topic. So we've got a bunch of regular videos that you can look at where I might explain something a little bit, but I don't really go fully into it. And so now I'm trying my best to break down each section of those bigger things into their own separate categories, so that if you want to learn more about just one aspect of something, you can. What I'm going to start out with really is the why and the how that we even are this way in the beginning, and whether or not to believe a lot of those stigma and things around it. And unfortunately that is something I really do need to address, because especially in certain parts of the world, people have just run wild with the idea that it's something bad, and it's not at all. Really, the biggest misconception is that it's some kind of mental health issue, and it's not. To say that you're born a certain way, your spirit is born a certain way, and to say that you're broken just because you're different, and to make that a mental health issue is absurd. Let me explain further, because I don't think that any mental health is broken. But what I'm trying to say is, in this light, the kind of light that they shine on it makes you think that you're broken. So basically, and you're not, but the type of light that these psychologists want to shine on this specific diagnosis. So let me explain. So in paganism, especially ancient paganism, which is what I teach and is what I practice, we believe that there are people that I would rather refer to as animal soul or animal spirit, because therian has way too much controversy as to exactly what that means and doesn't mean. So let's just say animal soul, okay? Where basically you've had many past lives, probably more past lives than not, as that animal. And so when you're born into your current life as a human, that is still a huge chunk of your spirit. You have instincts, you have mannerisms, you have sometimes even heightened senses, especially if it's someone who goes beyond just that their spirit is that of an animal, and they're an actual, what we call a shifter. And people shift in different ways. One of the most common ways of shifting is through dream work. When you're sleeping, you're dreaming that you're not. But anyway, we'll get into shifting later. In fact, I've got an entire playlist on shape shifting. I think it's just called shape shifting. Now, if you look at the shapeshifter vlogs, that's a totally different thing. That's not what you want. You want the one that says just plain old shape shifting, and that'll teach you all about all the different types of physical, mental, astral, all different kinds of shifts. Okay, so, and I have some in here, but really I won't have it all. So if you want all of it, go to the shape shifting playlist. But basically, in pagan belief, it's not it goes beyond just your mind, and it kind of, chakra wise, the spirit directly is connected to the body. And so it makes sense that if your animal is a spirit, perhaps that you have slightly different ways of processing things in terms of your senses. Some people are naturally stronger than they ought to be, not like Hulk or anything, but I just barely. And it's just, it goes into, okay, the body is reflected by the spirit, which is chakra lesson 101. Anyone who practices chakras believes in that context. I'm just taking that knowledge and turning it into, applying it to this, scenario. So you may find that literally certain physical aspects, you may be able to see in the dark better, you may have a really heightened sense of smell, loud noises might bother you, that may be affected. But most often than not, it's just the simple feeling like you crave to be out in the forest and you don't know why. And running on all fours, mimicking the sounds of whatever animal that it is, mimicking the behavior at a very young age. You become, not, I wouldn't say obsessed with it, but you latch onto it because that is something that is, whether or not you are aware of it, familiar to you. And so typically by age 5 to 10, I'll say, it depends on the individual, age 4 to 5 to 10, around that time is when the children usually start doing this. And they usually start, like for me, I just kind of thought, well, I must be part wolf, you know, and it kind of just blossomed from there. So it's nothing that is unnatural, and it's nothing that makes you insane or broken. It's just that all these other humans living in this world today that have not had many past lives as an animal, they think it's odd, they think it's strange. A part of your spirit is literally an animal, and the more times you've lived as that animal, usually the larger that piece is. For me, that's the biggest part of who I am. And so I'm like, you know, maybe this much human, and I'm like this much animal. And that spirit inside a human body, nothing feels right. You know, why is your muzzle so short? Why do you run so slow? Why do you not have a tail? You know, it's just, you feel sometimes so out of place that you literally want to just rip out of your own skin. That's what you feel like. And it's something that the longer you live as human, the more that that animal inside you wants to be free. And you have to let it be free. In a, you know, controlled manner. Don't just, you know, shift all the way into mental shift and never come out of it. There are people who have done that and have gotten hospitalized because of that. Because once they shift, they make it permanent by accident. I have a whole thing about that later if you want to learn more about that, but why people get stuck in that. But if you've got the balance, you can give yourself time to do that in your own time, in your own home, in your own space. And let that part of you be free. If you don't want to do that completely, then just, like, if you're worried about getting stuck that way, mental shift is basically where your brain completely 100% shifts into an animal, but you think you don't realize you have fingers anymore, and you literally, you know, think and act and be 100%. You forget you can talk. You know, if you don't want to go that far, then I would say do the running on all fours, do the vocalizations, because that is going to be nearly as freeing as the rest of this. But I will say mental shift does have a, if done in moderation, and balance, does have a very freeing side to it, and it can be quite helpful. Honestly, I was abused because of that, and so I was never allowed to really free that side of me, and because I never did that and never did anything, I would mental shift 100% on accident at random and get stuck like that for a few hours, and then I'd come back, luckily. So if it's suppressed enough, it does end up looking like insanity. If it's suppressed enough, think about it, you're running on all fours, you're not talking like a human, you're just, you know, hissing or growling or howling. And that to the naked eye may appear quite strange and insane. But indeed, it's just that it's bottled up for so long inside you that it just explodes one day. And once it's let out, it won't go back in. So, you know, it's just, it's not insanity at all. It's just your spirit's way of dealing with suppression. Constant, every day, for decades or how long, I don't know. So I understand that that is how the mental health thing probably arose in the beginning. Okay, it attracted a lot of attention, and for all the wrong reasons, and people just assume. But all in all, it's just that even though you may look human, it doesn't change the fact that your spirit is that of an animal, or at least partly so. It's different for everyone. But what I'm trying to say is that, you know, it's nothing to be ashamed of, and it's not mentally ill, unless perhaps you get stuck in mental shift forever. Then maybe yes. But even then, that doesn't happen because of some kind of mental imbalance. It happens because your spirit has been suppressed and not allowed to be itself. And the longer we're not allowed to be ourselves, one of two things happen with our chakras. It explodes one day, or our entire body starts to break down. Because again, like I said, back to the body is reflected directly from the spirit. If your spirit is constantly suppressed, you may eventually get something like cancer, an autoimmune disease, you know, just overall feeling weak and tired, something, a chronic illness, because that suppression is eating away at your soul, and it's also eating away at your body. You do have to have that balance of freeing it. It doesn't matter whether you call yourself a shifter or you call yourself just an animal spirit. It doesn't matter. And there are two different ones. There are people who can shift in various ways, and there are people who never shift in any way, but they're still an animal spirit. And either one of these, we all need that freedom. Okay? So nothing's wrong with you, you're just different. That's all it is. A long time ago, we were called demonic and possessed and all of that. And I've actually got my fair share of that as well because of my crazy family. And it's neither. It's neither. Humans are allowed to scream and yell and whatever. But for whatever reason, any strong, immense emotion, no matter what it is, we're not allowed to express ourselves. And the way that someone, an animal soul, when it's a really strong emotion, sometimes, like I said, things slip out. And I can understand why people misinterpret this. I'm going to show you just how insane it looks. And at the end, it's no different than me screaming a couple cuss words to somebody. It's just that I've done it in wolf tongue. You know, I resort to the core of who I am when I have everyone does, when I have an immense emotion, no matter what it is, no matter what kind of emotion. And for us, that means that we end up acting and sounding a bit like animals, sometimes. I'm not insane, I'm not lost my mind, I'm not possessed, I just was basically screaming fuck you in wolf tongue. Especially as children who cannot control themselves will do that. And they will attract way too much attention, and their parents will think that something's wrong with them and they're broken. They're not. It's just that that side of them, that animal side of them, for a moment, speaking its mind. That is all that it is. There's nothing wrong with it. And you should not forever, for any reason, shun